So this is 6.3b in trigonometry, and we are on example number 2, and they give us cosine of 2x equals cosine of x. Alright, this is the hated number, the number in front of the angle. We don't like those. So one of the things that we want to do is get rid of that. And if you remember from one of the other lessons, gosh, what lesson was that? Chapter 5, 5.5. There it says that. It says we can use cosine of 2x equals 2 cosine squared x minus 1. So even though it looks more difficult, we're going to replace cosine of 2x with that. And the reason for that is there's no number in front of the x here. So that's the only reason we're doing that. Alright, so what we're going to do here is rewrite this as 2 cosine. I'm going to take this, and we're going to say that that is equal to cosine of x instead. Then we're going to put all of this on the left-hand side, so 2 cosine squared of x, and I'm going to make it minus cosine of x minus 1 equals 0. And again, we're going to replace that with x. So this becomes 2x squared minus x minus 1 equals, oops, that's supposed to be 0, equals 0. And to me, again, it just makes it easier because then I can factor it into two binomials, and I can factor it into x, 2x plus 1 and x minus 1. Now I can go back and replace my x's with the cosine of x there. And when I do that, I get 2 cosine why put a parenthesis there? Let's not do that. Let's just leave it as 2 cosine of x plus 1 times, whoops, times just cosine of x minus 1. There. That's better. Alright, so notice, I put my cosine back in and I got that, which kind of looks like a mess, but I know that this times this equals 0. So one of these parentheses has to be equal to 0. So either that or that equals 0. So 2 cosine that, or those are your choices. So what does that give me? Well, that tells me that this angle right here, when I take the cosine of it, I get negative 1/2. Tells me that this angle, when I take the cosine of it, I'm going to get 1. Alright, so what intervals does that take me? Well, if I draw my thing here, all students take calculus. So cosine is going to be negative here and here in the second and third quadrant. And that's what I have here is negative. It's going to be positive here and here. So actually I'm going to get a bunch of different numbers here. So let's look and see when the cosine is negative 1/2. Cosine is negative 1/2 when my adjacent over my hypotenuse. My hypotenuse is always positive, so that means I've got a negative 1 there. And when is that negative? Over here, when my adjacent is negative 1 and my hypotenuse is 2. And up here, when again my adjacent is going to be that negative 1 and my hypotenuse is going to be 2. So those are my two places. So what angle is this? Okay, so you're going to have to figure that out. And if you remember, it ends up being a 60-degree angle. So in fact, it might be better to make that a 60-degree angle. There, now it's a 60-degree angle, which means this side here, we really don't care what that side is, but we know that if that's a 60-degree angle here, that's going to be pi over 3. So what is it from here to here? Well, there's 3 pi over 3's here, and we used up one of them here, so that means we have 2 pi over 3 there. And if we have 3 pi over 3 to get to there, and we go one more, we end up at 4 pi over 3 to get there. So those are my two possible angles when I get a cosine of the angle is negative 1/2. I get 2 pi over 3. I also get 4 pi over 3. Now let's look at this one. Cosine of 1. Let's make a new graph. When I make a new graph here, I get a cosine of 1, so that means my angle is going to be here or here. Those are the two places where it's positive because I've got an adjacent over a hypotenuse. So that means if this is 1, this is 1, and this is 1. Okay? So at that point where the hypotenuse and the adjacent line are equal in length is only when the hypotenuse is on top of the adjacent. So when it becomes smaller, this angle becomes smaller and smaller until the hypotenuse and the adjacent are the same. That's the only time you can get 1 over 1 with cosine, is when they're the same, which means this is going to shrink all the way down to 0, and this is going to shrink or go up all the way to 360 or 0. It's going to be on this line. So when my cosine of x is 1, my angle is going to be 0, and that is going to be my answer there. There's not two answers to that one. So we've got two more examples. We'll do those in the next video and then be done with lesson 6.3.